You are my friend. So, I've got an easy one to tee up, then it's your turn. And I will rephrase the question for the benefit of the folks that are watching on the internet so they can hear it through the mic. So keep your questions at my level, not his, so that I can do that well. But Tim, what I'd like to ask you is, you didn't see all the pictures, but you lived through it. In this project, what were the unique challenges you faced to get this organ to where it is today?
It's a bit like remodeling a house while the family is living in it and sitting down to eat breakfast each morning, and you're working around them and trying not to annoy them too much, but the organ was designed in a factory and built there and then brought here from Hagerstown, Maryland, and fit into this space. And then when we decided we wanted to take things out to refurbish them or to move them around and change them, it turned out that they had had the privilege of putting it in a very luxurious manner without the grills in place and sort of in the right order. And while we redid much of the organ, we couldn't removing the entire instrument would have been $300,000. Did we spend that much?
Not quite.
Okay.
Not quite.
It probably seems like it.
Might.
But to take everything out would have been impossible. So we had to work around things, which is why I went through more staff on this project than any other in 25 years. Because people burned out on crawling around inside. But there were a lot of wonderful folks who did very acrobatic, athletic tasks in hard-to-get-to places.
And the pipes, as they came out, someone asked me this question recently. They assumed that we took the grids out and all the pipes came out through, that seemingly large opening. I don't think we took any pipes out that way. They all came out through the trap door that's behind these rooms that's about this big.
It's about as big as the uncovered part of this table.
Yeah, right.
There's one on each side. Yeah.
So, yes. Your turn. Anyone have a question for Tim?
I wanted to give a disclaimer before there's a question.
Uh-oh. Okay.
I was more the organ builder than the performer tonight. So for those of you who play really well and know how all these pieces go, my sincere apologies that I couldn't get all the notes together. But that last C major chord was really in tune between both sides. So that was my pleasure more than playing all the notes correctly. Okay, I'm done.
Who would have known? Questions? Yes, in the back. The question is about the former carillon that we had there, and I can tell you that it is no longer there. We did have it removed, and Tim will tell us something about that.
The carillon was a sort of mid-20th century invention by it was electronic, and it was done by the 𝘾𝙀𝙉𝙉𝙏 company in Pennsylvania. They make a lot of handbells. And they constructed a system where the sound of bells would actually be transferred through speakers and play from the tower. And there was a small clavier that was on over here that was to play those. But those systems relied on vacuum tubes and a lot of things that we respect but don't necessarily maintain over the years. And the speakers are subject to pigeons. But the chimes are still here, and those are real chimes, And my apologies that I didn't work that into the program. But I'm guessing if you come to Christmas Eve here on Silent Night, you're going to hear those.
Might hear those.
But they live up in the arch and over the in the rear of the church, and there are 25 tubes, very much like you'd see on the orchestral stage. And we had that was another big challenge, was that there's a cable from here that goes to there. And in the midst of the project, the cable was compromised. So it's a small miracle that those chimes from 1951 up there still play from here.
And I discovered that those chimes weren't playing one Maundy, Thursday evening when we typically end the service with the tolling of a bell. There was no bell. So it didn't happen that night, but it will next time. Thank you for that. And by the way, the carillon had been out of service for some time prior to us taking it out. So I don't remember the last. And we had rolls and rolls of music that it would play through. But yeah, it hasn't worked for a while. There was another question on this side. Yes?
I'm not an organist, okay? So,
that's okay.
Tim, I hope you'll forgive me. What is the primary difference between a Moller organ and the 𝘾𝙀𝙉𝙏𝙍, which is in our Trinity Church?
So the question is the difference between a Moller organ and the 𝘾𝙀𝙉𝙏 that is at Trinity.
There are several Mollers in the Tri-Cities, and there's several 𝘾𝙀𝙉𝙁s in the Tri-Cities. 𝘾𝙀𝙉𝙁 is a company that started in Canada and in Quebec about 1890. Moller is a company that started in Hagerstown, Maryland, about 1880. They were somewhere else, but they ended up in Hagerstown. Moller came from more of a Germanic mindset. Matthias Moller himself was a Dane, and so his training was from Germany when he came here to start building organs. The 𝘾𝙀𝙉𝙁 brothers were, as you can imagine, of French extraction. And so both companies experienced boom and bust, as so many corporations do. And the Moller company in the 50s was continuing to flourish. The 𝘾𝙀𝙁𝙁 company in the 50s was struggling. And around 1960, the 𝘾𝙀𝙁𝙁 company got an infusion with a whole new artistic direction. And the Moller company slipped in the 1970s. So it was a back and forth. 𝘾𝙀𝙁𝙁 is still going. Moller is not. 𝘾𝙀𝙁𝙁 has built 4,500 organs. Moller built 13,000 organs. A lot of the question about the tonality of the two, a lot of that was influenced by the period and the to the customer to some degree, what the demands were. But it's definitely that this came out of the Germanic and English style, and the 𝘾𝙀𝙁𝙁 has remained French, which those speak to the sonorities that you hear in some of the reed stops, the nature of the flutes, and to some degree the room in which the organ speaks. So it's a richness that's in the Tri-Cities that we have a variety of instruments built relatively at the same time, but that have different characteristics. This organ, I think, comes out of its orchestral history, and you heard some of the big bass in this organ that is evoking a lot of what the Moller company did over the years. 𝘾𝙀𝙁𝙁 became more Baroque shortly after this organ was built. Our project was to bridge over a little of that artistically, because we want an organ in the 21st century that can play a little bit of everything. And that's what we aspire to do here.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Another. Yes, sir.
This organ was built in the 50s, and if I had a 1950s car, I could probably repair most of it. A car today know what to do when you open up the hood because there's so much stuff underneath it. Is this organ more repairable and maintainable than the old one? I saw a lot of a circuit board in there that keeps you control everything. Is it one circuit board?
That's a great question, and it's on with all of the circuitry now that is in the new organ. Is it more repairable or harder to repair? And is there an analogy to the way cars are between 1950 and today? That's a tough question.
Well, the mechanism that both Moller and Casavan and all of the other companies were using up until the 1970s was actually wind power and electric magnets. If you can picture the inside of a player piano, which is bewildering, that the player piano works on a vacuum principle but uses wind pressure. And that's how this organ's switching system was. If you see the size of the console, it has quite a bit of depth. It's a large cabinet, and it was chock full of air. There was air pressure actually going into the organ console, and the air pressure was helping to push the stops on or pull the stops off. The air pressure upstairs was opening the shades and closing the shades, turning stops on and pulling them off. And so the number of contrivances, I would call them, devices that were developed in the teens and the 20s continued in these factory organs to be used through the 50s and into the 60s. And they are wonders of mechanical ingenuity, but they're incredibly bulky and very complicated. And to restore them is a noble art, which some companies do that, but you are maintaining thousands, tens of thousands of dollars worth of little leather valves inside beautifully shellacked boxes that are airtight, and these tubes running everywhere. Whereas, and the result of that system is a very limited number of controls for the organist. So if you were watching on the console cam, when I pushed a button, the stops would move quickly. Well, we have at our disposal 1,200 combinations now that we can use. 100 levels of memory, 12 generals, and more than that, actually, because there are some other things. The old organ had 6 combinations. So you could set up 6 different types of sound in the organ, and that was it. But we've gone from 6 to 1,200. So we've compromised having that original, interesting, DeSoto-like 1950s amazing stuff. But we've gone to something that's simpler, and the circuit boards that you saw pictured, and I get very nervous in this town telling anybody anything about a circuit board. But I do know they're about this big, and there are 8 in the console, and 4 in that chamber, and 3 in this chamber. And they have little jobs to do, and they do them well. And if it goes bad, it's a few $100s and it gets replaced. Why would it go bad? Well, churches do get hit by lightning. We had a church in Ohio that lost the switching system in the organ, but they lost all of their audio video equipment, the office. It was a disaster. And the static electricity stayed in the organ for about a year. But they had a spire on the church. You have a spire? I don't think you do. You have a square tower.
It's a square, yeah.
Don't get a spire.
Okay.
Don't get a spire.
I'll add a little bit to that. Curious if you would agree with this. Some problems can happen the same with this organ as the organ 10 years ago, like a cipher, if a pipe gets unhappy. But sometimes there are problems that we're not quite sure where to look first. So I think the troubleshooting is perhaps a little more adventurous sometimes. What was the last problem we were working on, and someone was on the phone, and there's software involved, there's the programming of it, there's the actual board itself, there's the path to the pipe. So the troubleshooting's a little different, I would say.
The troubleshooting is better because in the 1950s, there was a wire for every key on the keyboard times 3 keyboards plus the pedals plus every stop plus the shades and the chimes, all going underneath the console, underneath the chancel, up into the chamber. So that was a bundle about this thick of wires. Every one of those wires was white. White. With cotton covering on it. Mice eat cotton. So our industry changed in the 1970s to telephone cable, which is color-coded. So we all know that white-blue is C and blue-white is C sharp. And that's true down here and up there and all over the place. So I would say, yes, it's a machine. It's going to have troubles. But it's a little easier now to figure that out because at least we have less anonymity of all those wires. And the wire that connects the console now is a fiber optic cable, which is why moving the console out, we need AC power for the lights and a fiber optic cable, and that is it.
But we'll try it first before the next concert.
Before anyone's here.
Another question. Gene.
Tim, would you explain that we do not have a 32-foot pipe in here, I'm assuming? You do not have a 32-foot resultant pipe. You make it digitally, right?
The question is on the 32-foot resultant pipe that we heard.
Very, very few churches have room for a 32-foot pipe. But that's the subsonic level where the hertz is in the around 40 cycles or so. And that's the low rumble everybody's craving, especially people in their cars with subwoofers. So a resultant is, am I on?
Yes.
I can't hear me. Okay. So the resultant plays a low pipe with another one above it. A fifth away for the musicians. So when we play low C, automatically the organ is playing a G on another set of pipes at the same time. So I'm doing this manually for you. So it gives it suggests to the ear the octave that's below that simply through the physics of sound. And the convenience that the switching system provides is that obviously you can't tie your hands up or your feet playing 2 notes at once.
Right.
So it creates that effect. And this is available on a lot of organs, but it's not an electronically generated sound. It's still 2 pipes playing together, but just in a sort of arranged marriage, if you will.
It's actually tough to get some of the 16-foot pipes in there, and if the ones that are up against the wall here bend and twist and turn to achieve their 16 feet. Anyone else?
I've never done a Q&A before.
He's doing okay. Going once? Twice? Okay, well, don't go. On behalf of your friends from Central, a little something for you and Mom to enjoy.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Do we have to share it right now?
No, you don't have to share it right now.
Oh, that's right. No reception.
No reception.
Oh, that's
But
beautiful. Thank you very much.
once again, Tim Smith, everybody. My mic. Thank you for coming, and have a good, safe journey home, everybody. Thank you.